Hey guys, and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a couple of polls that have come out today that are looking at the 2020 Democratic primary field. And it's a great time to take a look at these numbers so we can kind of benchmark where things currently stand before those first debates, which actually might be a catalyst to have things shift around a bit more than what we've generally seen. I'll be keeping an eye on these polls in the coming weeks to see if we do get some type of shift in the numbers compared to where we were at before heading in to the first debates. But before talking about these two more scientific polls, I have a very unscientific poll that I want to just touch on, and that's the one that I did over on my Twitter over this past week. And these Twitter polls in general, I've asked who would you support to be the 2020 nominee. Bernie always absolutely crushes it and runs away with first place. So I thought I'd change it up a little bit this time. I asked a more Bernie specific question. I asked if he were to win the nomination, which of these options would be your choice for vice president? And almost 3,000 people casted a vote. Thank you to all who participated. Tulsi Gabbard winning this one with 39% support. All the other candidates were relatively similar, with Nina Turner and Andrew Yang at 21% and Elizabeth Warren at 19%. So now I want to go back and take a look at those more scientific polls, starting with the Morning Consult. And Joe Biden, he tends to do quite a bit better in these Morning Consult numbers than what we've seen from him in other national polls. And I think this might be because of the way the Morning Consult asks their questions, where they say, well, if you're not locked into your first place choice on who you're going to be supporting, who are you at least leaning towards? So kind of that culmination of people who are number one choice supporters of Joe Biden with the addition of people who are leaning towards him. He's up to 38%, where some of these other polls, they just ask, who do you support right now? Or if you don't support anyone, maybe having a not sure option. But Biden, he's been consistently in the upper 30% range with the Morning Consult with his national numbers in comparison to these other polls where he's generally hovered more in the mid 20 to up to mid 30% range, kind of everything in between there. But again, a little bit higher with these Morning Consult numbers. And Bernie, he's been very consistent with his second place standing over at the Morning Consult, staying at 19% support. Elizabeth Warren has made herself the clear third place option at 13% support. And a lot of people say Sanders and Warren, they're the most progressive people. So if Warren is gaining, that probably means Sanders is receding. But that hasn't been the case because Sanders has consistently stayed right around 20% over the past month, while Warren has almost doubled her numbers over the past month with the Morning Consult. So that tells me that Warren is getting her support more so from people that are below her in the standings in these polls. So we have Pete Buttigieg at 7% in fourth place, Kamala Harris in fifth place at 6%, Beto O'Rourke at 4%, Cory Booker at 3%, and Andrew Yang at 2%. And Yang up 1 percentage point here, up to 2. Pretty respectable for him, considering nobody knew who this guy was coming into the process. He has a pretty solid online base of support, and he's been able to kind of parlay that into getting more national exposure in the mainstream media. We'll see if he's able to do well in the debates. Maybe he's able to jump up a bit, but I'm kind of the opinion where if you're not able to outperform at least Andrew Yang at this point in time, maybe you should bow out of the race. We have 25 people that are currently running. A lot of them are senators, people in the House of Representatives, governors, people that have been a part of the Democratic Party and have won political office. And if you're not even able to outperform somebody who is a complete unknown, which is an Andrew Yang, obviously, coming into the process, maybe it's a situation where you shouldn't be running. But we'll see how these numbers change after the first debate and maybe get a better idea of where things are going to go after that. So beyond this, just looking at those early primary states of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada, Biden continuing to crush it, 43% support. And a lot of this has to do with the strength that he's likely getting from the African-American vote in South Carolina. Hillary Clinton back in 2016 dominated Bernie Sanders in the southeastern states, very strong support amongst African-American voters. Biden is pretty likely, it seems, to get the wealth of this African-American vote in the southeast, and that's likely to be where he does very well in the 2020 arena, just like Clinton did back in 2016. And if Bernie is going to be able to beat Biden, he has to at least make the margins more respectable this time around than what they were back in 2016. But then we see behind Joe Biden, we have Sanders at 21%. He's likely doing quite well in states like Iowa, New Hampshire, maybe Nevada. I'm a little bit skeptical at what Bernie might be able to do in South Carolina. He has made a ton of appearances in South Carolina, campaigning, doing things such as that. So maybe he's able to do a bit better this time around. And we still have quite a number of months to go before we actually reach those primaries. And then all the other candidates in the early states are less than 10 percentage points, which is a difficult situation for them to be in because you have to reach at least 15% support to be part of the candidates that get divvied up with those pledged delegates. So if this was the case, you would get a situation after the first 4 states where it would be only Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders potentially that would have anything in the way of pledged delegates. And some more interesting information from this particular morning consult poll, and that's net favorability. Joe Biden has seen quite a bit of a dip in his net favorability from where he was back in mid-February. And it's relatively simple to explain this. So before Joe Biden threw his name into the arena and said that he was running, a lot of positive feelings towards him, nostalgia, the fact that he was vice president for 8 years under Barack Obama, a very positive former president amongst those Democratic primary voters. And just not having your name in the political arena means that people in general are going to have a very positive sentiment towards you. But as soon as he's thrown his hat in the ring, more negative coverage. He's had a lot of gaffes along the way, and as a result, we see his net favorability down to 60%, where it was almost 10 percentage points higher just a handful of months ago. It'll be interesting to see if it continues to recede and even dip below Bernie at some point in time. I expect Bernie's numbers to continue to be very steady. He's had his name in the political arena for a number of years now, and that's why it's not surprising to see Sanders have his numbers be very consistent in the upper 50s to 60% range with his net favorable, basically unchanged from where it was back in mid-February. The other 2 top candidates, Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg, have had some shifting in their numbers. So Warren was at 34% to the positive. Now she's up to 44% to her positive net favorables. And Pete Buttigieg was only at 4%, which means very weak name recognition. And now he's up to around 33%, which is a positive sign for his campaign, although he has been getting a bit more negative coverage recently, so we'll see if he's able to continue to gain or not with his numbers in particular. But now Biden and Sanders, with their net favorability amongst Democratic primary voters, are very similar. We'll see if this continues to be the case or not in the coming weeks. All right, so now I want to go over and take a look at the monthly Emerson poll that we're getting, and Biden in first place, 34% support, a little bit lower than his morning consult numbers. Sanders quite a bit higher than his morning consult numbers at 27% support. But then all the other candidates are relatively similar to what they had over in the morning consult. So you have Warren in a solid third place at 14%, Kamala Harris at 7%, Pete Buttigieg at 6%, Cory Booker at 3%, and then all the other candidates are at 1 percentage point or less. A very weak poll here for Beto O'Rourke. He just hasn't been able to get things off the ground in a positive way. I'd really like to see him maybe run for the Senate in Texas. He might be the Democrats' best option there, but there's also somebody else running that a lot of progressives would prefer over O'Rourke to maybe take on Cornyn. But just the fact that O'Rourke did so well back in 2018, and he could perhaps parlay that success into actually legitimately challenging Cornyn and maybe taking him down in 2020, maybe he's not a bad option for the Democrats to try to pick up a Democratic Senate seat in the state of Texas. But just based on the numbers that we've been seeing from Beto O'Rourke, it's been trending in not positive direction, to say it mildly. All right, so now I want to take a look at some more numbers here. And the candidates that have the strongest loyalty, where they say, I'm pretty much certain that I'm going to be voting for these candidates. You have Biden, 50% of his support comes from those types of people. And with Sanders, it's at 55% that are pretty much set on their candidates. So maybe not a ton of options for these guys that have the most support. They're also having the most loyal support, so their numbers might be consistently strong throughout the whole process. It would be a surprise to see significant reductions, potentially, given how loyal a lot of the supporters are for Biden and Sanders in comparison to those numbers are just 33% with Warren, 18% for Harris, 17% for Pete Buttigieg, where they say, well, maybe I could have my mind change and I could still be voting for somebody else. More people who are supporting these other candidates are open to supporting other candidates. So we'll see, again, how that plays out with the numbers. But it does feel like it's going to be a situation where it could become a two-horse race between Biden and Sanders, given the fact that they're in first place and second place by decent margins, and they have the most loyal supporters on top of that. And it continues to be a situation where young people are for Bernie Sanders, where he has 38% of those 18 to 29, followed by Warren with 22 and Biden with 21. Actually, Biden doing a little bit better amongst this young demographic than maybe I would have expected, but he's at 21%, which is relatively respectable for him there. In the mid-tier age range of 30 to 49, Biden and Sanders basically tied at around 30%. Those who are 50 to 64, Biden has 39, and then followed by Sanders, who's at 24. And this is actually a little bit better for Sanders than I would have expected amongst this age category. It's kind of the reverse of the 18 to 29, where Sanders has 38 and Biden has 21. It's kind of the opposite there with 50 to 64, where Biden has 39 and Sanders has 24% support. And then we see the oldest age demographic, those over 65, Biden absolutely crushing it with 52% support, followed by Warren at 12%, and Sanders, again, not doing great amongst this particular age demographic, where he's only at 11% support. And then we can also see African Americans, where Biden is doing extremely well, 60% support amongst this demographic, where Harris and Sanders are each at 12% support. And then amongst white voters, you have Biden at 28, Sanders at 27, Warren at 16. And then we see amongst Hispanic or Latino voters, where Bernie's actually doing really well for himself at 44% support, followed by Biden at 26, Elizabeth Warren at 11, and Kamala Harris with 7%. So we're kind of getting a situation where white voters, at least in this Emerson poll, are pretty split amongst Biden and Sanders, and then Sanders doing quite well amongst Latino and Hispanic voters, while Biden is getting a lot of support from African Americans, and that's where things currently stand there. And now just looking at the head-to-head matchups, which is also quite important information to look at when you're trying to decide who you want to be the nominee or not. It's who performs the best against Donald Trump. And we can see the top two candidates, Biden and Sanders, have a 10 percentage point lead over Donald Trump, 55% to 45%. Warren doing a little bit better for herself this time around, a 6 percentage point lead over Trump. Pete Buttigieg with a 4% lead, as well as Kamala Harris with a 4 percentage point lead in those head-to-head matchups with Donald Trump. So it's a situation, again, where the top two candidates are continuing to perform the best in their head-to-head matchups against Donald Trump. And obviously some of this is just baked into the fact that Sanders and Biden have basically universal name recognition, and that's baked into these numbers, where Warren, Buttigieg, and Harris don't have that universal name recognition, so people are just a little bit less likely to commit to them in a head-to-head against Trump, potentially, than what Sanders and Biden are showing consistently poll after poll. So those are all the numbers that I wanted to touch on, guys, in this video, kind of benchmarking where things are at before we head into those first debates, which might be a catalyst to actually see some more shifting in the polls in the coming weeks. So thanks for stopping on in, subscribe for more, and I hope to see you guys back here for future videos.